All right, guys. Welcome to this week's training. This video is we're going to talk a little bit about the basic foundation of taking over a hardwired system. This is going to be really good for first year guys to watch before they go to the class, or even after they go to the class, or just a great thing to review with your technicians. Okay, so some basic stuff that we actually need to kind of talk a little bit about on a hardwired system is when you show up to a house and it has an existing hardwired system, there's some things that you're going to need to identify. Number one, a basic hardwired system is when like doors, windows, motions, and glass breaks are all hardwired into a basic location of the house or into a computer chip or a CAN in the house. Now, there are some smoke detectors and hardwired carbon monoxide detectors that are also attached to these hardwired systems. We are not ever going to take those over, okay? Just so you know, we'll talk a little bit more about that. So you go into a house, you know that you're going to do a hardwired takeover. There are certain things that you need to identify first. Number one, I would probably identify the actual keypad that's on the wall that the customer is using to arm and disarm that system. Some things you want to go over to, you want to make sure it's powered up. Make sure that there's no fault. If there is a fault, see what zone it is. It might be the door is still open or a window's open. All you have to do is shut it. Make sure everything is actually communicating with the panel, okay? The other thing that we're going to locate is the CAN. So there's a place somewhere in that house that all the wires actually come back to it. So we actually need to go in and find that CAN. When we find that CAN, we can open it up. A few things inside that CAN we want to look for. A schematic sheet of how the thing is wired up, what each terminal on that board does. Okay, we need to identify that. We need to identify where the phone line comes into, because these hardwired systems were actually hooked up to the customer's landline or their phone line, and we need to identify that part so that we can unplug the phone. So if it's being monitored, it doesn't send any signals when we start taking it apart. Okay. Then we need to find out where the transformer is that's powering up this system. Okay, we'll show you what a transformer looks like. You want to know where it is so that you can actually unplug it, unplug the battery, unplug the phone so you kill the power to it. The next thing that we're going to look at is the schematic sheets. We need to identify the zones. Remember, there's only 4 pieces of equipment that we're going to take over on hardwired system. Hardwired door, hardwired motion, hardwired windows, and hardwired glass breaks. Everything else we can't take over, which we'll discuss in the class, but there are certain things we can't take over. We may mention those throughout the video. Okay? Once we get to that point, that's when we want to start doing the work on the CAN, start taking it apart. So let's go take a look at a keypad. I'll give you a few more hints there that might help you, but let's walk over to the keypad and take a look at it. All right, guys, once we identify the keypad in the customer's house, you know, we want to make sure that it's powered up, that it's working, there's some lights on and stuff like that. The other key thing is what I would do is a lot of them have little doors that might pull down, they might pull out the bottom, they might pull out the side. A lot of times the zones are actually marked on those keypads, and if they are, great, make a copy of them. You know, it might say zone 1 is a motion detector. Zone 2 is the front door. Zone 3 is the back door. Zone 4 is the garage door. Zone 6, back windows. And Zone 6, front windows. So that's a good indication to kind of give you, hey, what zones am I going to be working with? What am I going to do? Once you see those, you know, what those zones are, you want to identify where the motion detector is or where that glass break is. Go look at the windows and find the switches that are on those windows or on those doors. And this will just come by experience, but you know, you want to start trying to analyze this system and break it down a little bit. But a keypad is a good place to start in case there is something written down that will identify what those zones are. I know that this one doesn't have it. This is just kind of one of our training, but hopefully you get the idea of, you know, trying to get as much information as you can get from the keypad before you start pulling wires off the CAN. So now let's go identify the CAN real quick. All right, guys. Now a lot of times the customer is going to know where the CAN is because it's either going to be in a closet, in a basement, it might be in their garage, it might be up in an attic or something like that. But a lot of times the customer is going to know kind of where the brains are, the big brown box or the black box, okay? So you can ask them. This is kind of what a can looks like, a basic can in a house. This is one in our training facility. But there might be a key to open it or some screws here. So you want to get it actually open so that you can look into it, you know. There's going to be a battery hooked up into it. There's also going to be what we call an RJ block, something that looks like this, okay. They're going to have some phone lines that are coming off. They're going to plug into this side right here. All you need to do is unplug that cord from there, and that will actually kill the phone line going through this panel, but it'll leave the phone line working in their house. So all you have to do is just unplug it from this front end, okay? Now, you're going to be looking at this, and you want to go in and you want to find the schematic board right here, okay? This is the schematic sheet. What it does is it tells me exactly what these terminals do, okay? And we'll go in this a little bit more detail, but 1 and 2 is the power that's powering up this system from a transformer, okay? 3 and 4 power up the siren. 4, 5, 6, and 7 power up the keypad. So this is the keypad that we were just looking at. And then it gets it down into the zones. So this one has 6 hardwired zones on it, and it goes and tells me, you know, these 2 screws right here is zone 1. These 2 screws are zone 2. The next 2, zone 3, zone 4, zone 5, and zone 6. Okay, because that's kind of the basic system that we're going to be working with. So the schematic sheet is the most important thing here. Okay, once you identify that, you start looking at these. You have wires that are wired up. Before we start taking wires off, we want to make sure we understand what each of them does. And a lot of times it's a good practice to actually take a Sharpie and mark the wires as you pull them off, or you convert them over one at a time. Don't go in and start cutting and pulling things off, because if you do that, you don't know where they go. It's going to cost you a lot of time on that install. Okay, so you find the can, and then the next step is we want to find the power, the transformer to power down. So we're going to go look for the transformer. We're going to power the system down. We want to pull the plugs off the battery, and we want to make sure we unhook the phone line before we do anything from there. So let's go find that transformer. All right, guys, so once you identify where the transformer is, a lot of times it's usually in the same room or might be plugged in somewhere. Most of them kind of look like this, a little brown one. Now, Vivint's policy is anytime that you do a hardwire takeover, we actually give you another transformer that goes along with the takeover and the AD power supply. So what we need you to do is we need you to replace the customers with our actual transformer. This is a 16 volt transformer, 40 VA, okay? A lot of times these might be 16 volts, but they might be 15 VA or 20 VA. And if you leave this attached to power up your takeover module and your AD power supply, you will definitely get service calls or a low battery eventually where you'll be going back out of the house. So like we said, once you identify where this is at, what you need to do is you need to power it down. So just take it and unplug it for now, pull it out, and that's going to kill the power to the actual system. You know, we're going to make sure that we actually power down the battery and unplug the phone before we start taking those wires off. So we're going to come back to this once we get ready to power up, and we're going to install our takeover module power transformer, which is the white one that looks like this, 16 volts, 40 VA. All right, guys, this is a basic setup of a hardwired system. We've gone through the steps. We've kind of identified our zones that we're going to take over. We're going to do a motion, 3 doors, and some windows. Okay, so we've identified those. We know what zones they might be. And we've powered it down. We've unplugged the phone. We've killed the battery. As you can see, there's battery cables that are up here that were hooked to the battery here. So we actually want to disconnect those. We've got everything killed down. Okay, we've got our schematic sheet, which is usually going to be on the lid right here. So we have it sitting in front of us, and we want to go through and we want to identify the wires. Okay, the wires that we are most concerned about is the wires that are actually powering this board up here, okay, from the existing transformer. The second set of wires is the keypad wires. Now, a hardwired keypad is going to use 4 wires. There's 2 that's going to power it up, and then there's 2 that are going to be the communication wires that send the commands back and forth to each other. Now, a keypad is DC power, 12 to 14 volts DC power. DC means positive and negative, okay? The other wires that we're going to be concerned about now are the zones wires, okay? We know that we're going to identify where the zones are actually wired up into this, okay? There's 2 components we want to talk about, a hardwire motion and a hardwire glass break. Those 2 components actually take 4 wires. You have 2 communication wires, and then you have 2 power wires, okay? They are also DC power, so you have a DC negative and a DC powered, then the other 2 are communication wires. So when someone walks in front of the motion, it sends information saying, hey, someone's walked in front of the motion, or I'm detecting motion, or I need to arm up. So you have communication wires, and then you have power wires. Doors and windows only take 2 wires. It's just continuity. They're always constantly talking to each other, okay? And then when you have the switch in the door and the magnet lined up to it, when that door opens, that continuity is broken, so the panel knows, hey, this door just opened, or I need to trigger the alarm or do whatever. So those are some key things that you need to know about those 4 components, the keypad, and then your power wire. So the key thing is now we have 4 components that we're going to be working with, all right? This is what we call the takeover module, okay? As you can see, it has some battery cables. It has some terminals underneath here that you want to be familiar with. The very first one is G for ground, okay? And then you have 12V for 12 volts. This is your positive. So it's kind of like a negative and positive, 12 volts. And then you have 1 through 8, okay? These are where your zones are going to go into. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then this is how you're going to power up your take module, okay? Now, there's another very, very important piece of equipment. This is called the AD power supply. Okay, this is very, very crucial to powering up your take module and powering up your devices like a hardwire glass break and a hardwire motion detector, because we know that they need 12 to 14 volts power. Okay, so if you look at this one, it does have battery cables that we're going to hook into the battery, and going across the bottom we have 4 terminal screws. Okay, we have AC, and then we have DC negative, and we have DC positive, okay? Those are crucial if you understand DC power, okay? So we have those 4. The other thing that's crucial is they have some sticky pads on the back of here, okay? We want to make sure that this metal board never touches this metal on this, because you're going to short it out, okay? So these sticky pads, you can pull them off and actually stick this to it, but you want to make sure that this does not touch metal. That's why we have those sticky pads. So memorize what this looks like. This is called the AD power supply, and then we have our actual takeover module, okay? So there's a difference. So when you're training or you're reviewing these, know the difference between the AD power supply and the take module, okay? AD power supply, take module. Okay, the other 2 components is every time you go into a house, you want to put a brand new 12 volt battery in, okay? Do not use the customer's existing battery. Always carry brand new ones with you. Replace them all the time. And then we're going back to the transformer. So those are the 4 components right there, okay? Transformer, battery, take module, AD power supply. All right, guys, what a lot of technicians do is they'll go in and actually prep their takeover module and prep their AD power supply. There's a couple ways that you can actually prep it. So the thing that I'm going to tell you is, first of all, you're going to need 3 black wires, okay? These are going to be your ground wires or your negative wires, and then you need 1 red wire, okay? And as you can see, I've taken one of the 3 black wires that I have, and I've actually put it into the G of the takeover module, okay? The other black wire that I've got, my second black wire, I've actually put it in the DC negative on the AD power supply, okay? You're only going to need 1 red wire, and I've actually put that into the DC positive on the AD power supply, okay? And then you have a third wire that you're going to attach, and we're going to show you later on in the video where you're going to attach your third black wire. So you cut 3 pieces of black wire, one red one, maybe 6 inches long, and as you can see, we have red in DC positive, black in DC negative, and then we have the other black one in the G on the takeover module, and this one's just floating.